Welcome to a new week here on the Retirement Quick Tips podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Micciche, co-owner of True North Retirement Advisors, a fee-only fiduciary financial practice managing over $390 million in client assets. If you are a few years on either side of retirement and looking for some daily quick tips to help you on your retirement journey, you are in the right place. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to the podcast. This week's theme is, are the days of ultra low interest rates gone for good? I don't know. Mortgage rates were 13% in the early 1980s when my baby boomer parents bought their first house. Of course, they also paid less than $100,000 for what is worth about $700,000 today. They love reminding me of this when I bought my first house when rates were closer to 5%, how lucky we were when we bought our first house. And of course, even from 2009, when I bought my first home to a few years later, fast forward, you have mortgage rates at 3.5% for a very long time. Times have, of course, changed a lot since the 1980s when both inflation and interest rates were much higher than they are today. And after rates pretty much went to zero in the financial crisis of 2008 and stayed there for the last 15 years, we got pretty used to living in a world of ultra low interest rates. We got so used to it that nearly everybody expected that the Fed would quickly raise interest rates, squash inflation, then quickly move interest rates back down again. But that is not happening. And the narrative on interest rates is starting to change. You have mortgage rates not at 13% like they were in the early 1980s, but they're closer to 8% today, which is hard to believe, actually. And inflation is sticking around. It is moderated quite a bit. It's around 3 to 3.5%, but it's not back down to the 2% target that the Fed is looking for in order to start lowering rates. We got so used to this new normal of cheap debt and low rates that stuck around for such a long period of time. It's an interesting question, I think, to ask, and a worthwhile question to ask when it comes to managing your finances, your investment portfolio, making debt decisions, real estate decisions. Is it possible that we may never go back to that ultra low interest rate environment again, at least in the foreseeable future, perhaps for many, many years? And then what does that mean for the economy? What does it mean for your investment portfolio? What does that mean for managing your cash and debt? So I'm going to talk about all of that and why it is reasonable to expect that although interest rates may start coming down within the next year, it's also reasonable to adjust your expectations about the real possibility that interest rates could stay higher for much, much longer. And we are not going back to that ultra low rate environment, perhaps ever. Thank you so much for tuning in this week. If you know someone who could benefit from this week's theme, someone maybe you've talked to about inflation or interest rates lately, please take a moment to share the show. It takes just a few seconds to hit that share icon wherever you're listening right now, and then you can text or email the show link to a friend, a neighbor, a colleague, whoever you know who is eyeing retirement and might be interested in what we're talking about this week. I really appreciate it. It's one of the best things you can do to support the show if you're getting value from the podcast. All right, coming back tomorrow. It's a 2-part episode the next couple of days. I'm going to talk about the case for higher interest rates for longer. Like, why is it reasonable to expect that interest rates will stay higher for longer? I'll cover that tomorrow. My name is Ashley Micciche, and this is the Retirement Quick Tips podcast.